so happy that you are here. How many of you are here for the first time? Raise your hand. Yeah, welcome. We're so happy you're here. At Doulos, it is our vision to see a spiritual legacy be built by Christ-centered laborers in every UF chapter that would expand to reach the rest of campus and then go out into the world. So if you are here for the first time, Doulos isn't just a meeting or an organization that meets once a week, but it's a movement that's centered on Christ and centered on sharing the gospel in the Greek system.
If you guys have your Bibles, you guys can turn to Luke 9 and verse 10. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Alright, here we go. When the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they had done. Then he took them with him, and they withdrew by themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowd learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging because we are in a remote place here." He replied, "You give them something to eat." And they answered, "We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd." But he said to his disciples, "Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each." The disciples did so, and everybody sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to set before the people. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over.
Thank you, Matt of Sept, for letting us be here tonight. I don't know who here is from Sept here besides Justin, but okay, thank you, guys. I checked on the national website today, and there was 12 Christian men that founded this fraternity back in 1901, right? So this is probably an answer to their prayer that they never got to see fulfilled, that there would be this type of thing happening under this roof, these walls. So that's pretty cool. So thank you guys for opening this place back up. Looks great. The remodel went well. So enjoy it. Glad you guys are here. I'm Scott. I have the privilege of working with Doulos, and I'm really excited about what Justin just read, and we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that passage tonight and just make a few observations and a few applications of what that's going to look like for you living out your faith in your chapter. So keep your finger or your like in the Bible or clicking on that passage. But I just want to start off with a quick little story. This summer I was in Estes Park, Colorado. Don't know if anybody's been there, and we were hiking in the Rockies. And it was a short hike. It was only about 3 hours. I don't know if you've ever been on the top of a mountain when a storm rolls in. And so this storm rolls in, and we are booking it down the mountain. We went down the mountain so fast that my friend Jay's hands began to swell up, and he took off his wedding ring because his hands were just like balloons. And so there was one time when the lightning struck and the thunder boomed, and it literally like almost felt like it was going to blow our heads off. It was so loud on the top of the mountain. So I don't know if you've ever had that experience. I don't recommend being on top of a mountain when it's a thunderstorm. But as we were making our way up the path, and on the way up, it was a beautiful sunny day. We're talking, we're enjoying hanging out, and being out in the great outdoors in the mountains. And at one point, we realized we are no longer on the path. And so we're looking around like, where did the path go? And so we had 2 options. We could keep going in the same direction we were going and just kind of hope for the best. Maybe we'll find the path again. Or we could backtrack and go back to find the path. That's what we ended up doing. We ended up backtracking and going back to the path so we could actually get up the mountain. But what we didn't realize is that there was this hairpin left turn, almost like a U-turn, all the way to the left that we had missed because we were talking. And I thought about it, that's what we do a lot of times with God, is we think we know who God is, and we go in this one direction, and we have all these misconceptions of who God is, Our peers tell us one thing, our parents tell us another, the school we grew up in told us this, maybe the church you grew up told us that, the media tells us one thing, your fraternity brothers tell you this, your sorority sisters tell you that. Like, we have no idea really who God is. And so what I want to speak on tonight from this passage is that we have got to see Jesus as he reveals himself to us, not just our conjured up ideas of who God is. And so we have got to let Jesus define who he is for us. And that's why the word is so important. So that's why we use the Bible here at Doulos. So unless you see Jesus for who he is as he reveals himself, you'll never truly know Jesus. And believe me, he is greater than you think. Not only that, if you don't know who Jesus truly is, you'll never know how you fit into that plan. And I guarantee you, he has got a plan for you that is greater than what you think. So that's what I want to show us tonight from this passage. Luke 9, 10 through 17, if you're still there. This is how Jesus reveals himself. He does this thing that is impossible. He takes 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and he feeds over 5,000 people. Most scholars, the Bible here says that there were 5,000 men, so most scholars think that there were also women and children there at this picnic in the wilderness. And so there are upwards to maybe 15,000 people here that Jesus feeds with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And so the obvious implication is, this is impossible. This doesn't happen. And so Jesus is revealing himself as the King of creation. And if you've grown up in church or any kind of setting like that, that is not a new concept to you. In fact, if you grew up Jewish, or if you have any Jewish brothers and sisters in your chapter, if they had been in this scene back in the 1st century, they would have immediately made 2 inferences in their mind to the Hebrew Scriptures, what we call the Old Testament. They would have immediately thought of Elijah, the great prophet, who had 100 men with him, and with 20 loaves of bread, did a miracle and fed 100 people. They would have immediately thought, is this Jesus saying he is greater than the great prophet Elijah? And the answer is yes. And if you had a Jewish background, you would have immediately thought of the children of Israel when they had come out of Egypt. They were in the wilderness for 40 years, and God literally rained down manna or bread from heaven. Jesus would later say, I am the bread of life. I am the manna of heaven, literally. And so if you were a Jewish person listening to Jesus and watching him feed more than 5,000 people, you would immediately think, is Jesus claiming to be greater than the great prophet Moses? And the answer is yes. He is greater than Elijah. He is greater than Moses. Now, that might not really strike us as, wow, way to go, Jesus, but let me put this maybe into a UF context. If you're a football fan, you'll understand. If this is not, you'll have to Google it. But imagine you're a UF freshman coming to play football at UF, and you walk in the first day and you say to Coach McElwain, I am greater than Steve Spurrier. I am even greater than Davey Warfel. Oh, I am even greater than the great Tim Tebow. That's the kind of claim Jesus was making when he was saying he was greater than Elijah, greater than Moses. He was making this claim that nobody would have ever considered. And he's making this claim not just with his words, he's doing it through his actions. He's showing the people that he is greater. And so it's my hope that as you come to Doulos, as you go to church, as you are part of a house Bible study, as you do personal devotions, as you read the Word on your phone or actually in pages, that you would actually see him for who he really is. And you would recognize that he is greater than anything else. In fact, he's not just greater, he's altogether different than anything else we've ever known. Because he's the one that brought us grace. Scandalous grace, amazing grace, undeserved favor grace. And so in this place, in this story, the people are understanding there is no human way possible to take 5 loaves and 2 fish and multiply them in such a way that you're going to feed over 5,000 people. This this must be someone greater than we were expecting. And so for Jesus, this is an easy thing, just to create some food. Remember, he's the king of creation. He's the one that spoke. And 1 billion galaxies were instantly created. So to feed a few thousand people, that's no big deal to Jesus, but that was a big deal to the people because they had not seen something like this before. Someone greater than Elijah, someone greater than Moses. In fact, someone altogether different, Jesus. So the problem is, since the Garden of Eden, since our original spiritual father and mother, Adam and Eve, since they sinned against God and rebelled against Him, and have been trying to figure out what God is really like, who He really is, we've been doing the same thing. We've been conjuring up things and misconceptions about God ever since then. Who really is God? What is He really like? What is He really about? How do I really connect with Him? And so, what I first want to just say is, first we have to acknowledge that Jesus is the King of creation. And secondly, we need to submit to Him as the Lord of our life. So if you're looking for application, this is one of the first things I want you to do. I want you to acknowledge Jesus is the King of creation. And in doing so, don't just acknowledge Him, but submit your life to Him. Whether you're a Christian or non-Christian, it's the same call. Submit your life to the King of creation and the Lord of your life. And so this is what theologians call an argument from lesser to greater. So all He did here was He supplied one meal for a bunch of people. That's kind of a small thing. But when you look to the cross, that's a big thing. He took our sin and nailed it to the cross through His body, died on the cross, was buried, raised again. That's a lesser to the greater. Does that make sense? If He's willing to do this small thing, feed them for one meal, of course He's going to do something even greater. The Bible also does a greater to lesser thing, but we won't get into that. So, Jesus is revealing Himself as the King of creation and as the Lord of our life, and we're being called to submit to Him and acknowledge Him as that. But that's not where it ends. See, this miracle is unlike other miracles because Jesus actually involves the 12 disciples in the miracle. In fact, this miracle is the only miracle besides the resurrection that's recorded in all 4 of the accounts about Jesus, the first 4 books of the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is the only miracle besides the resurrection that is mentioned all 4 times. So it has some special significance to the disciples who are the eyewitnesses writing these accounts. And I think it's because Jesus wanted to show them that they could participate in miracles in the ministry with Him. See, before this, they had just been watching Jesus do the ministry. They'd been watching Jesus do all the miracles. And now, for the first time, He's actually inviting them to participate with Him, which is an amazing thought. So He says, if you look in your Bible there, they say to Jesus, you need to send all these people away. There's too many people. They need to go and get some food. And Jesus says what? You give them something to eat. Well, Jesus, all we got are, 5 loaves, 2 fish. That's not even to feed us, let alone all these people. You give them something to eat, He says. I'm going to involve you guys in the process. So have them all sit down in these groups, and Jesus looks up to heaven. He thanks God the Father. He breaks the bread, and He gives them to the disciples. And the disciples start to hand it out to all the people. And the text doesn't even tell you how it happens. It's almost like it doesn't even matter to the writer how the miracle happens, but it matters who is getting to do the miracle. So here they are passing out all this food, and it just keeps multiplying over and over and over and over again. So much so that all these people, it says they eat and they're satisfied, and there's leftovers. How many basketfuls of leftovers? 12 basketfuls. How many disciples were there? 12 disciples. So they each get to carry home a basket full of food that was probably more than what they started with. Each of them was carrying and going, I can't believe this happened. Jesus just did this incredible thing that we got to participate in. So the message to us, Doulos, is Jesus is saying to you, you give them something to eat. You give them something of my kingdom. I want to read what that might look like for you as you go back to your houses tonight and go to class tomorrow. Matthew 25, Jesus said, this is at the end of time. He's talking to the people that were a part of his kingdom. He says, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. And they said to him, when did we do those things? And it says, the king said to them, whenever you did this to one of the least of these, you were doing it directly to me. So when you serve your chapter, you are bringing in the kingdom in a small way each time you do that. So it could be as simple as giving that girl a dress to wear to game day. It could be as simple as giving that guy a ride home from Midtown. It could be as simple as, let me see, I wrote a few things down here. It could be as simple as asking, hey, can I pray for you? It could be as simple as you heard a bad report that your roommate got from their parents back home. Can I listen? Tell me what's going on back home. It could be as simple as just holding back her hair when she's doing her thing that night. It could be simply inviting someone to church. It could be guys just treating a pledge like they were a real person. You're going to get a chance to do that in a few weeks. Don't treat them too nice, but treat them like they are a real person. They have a name, family, everything. So there are so many simple ways that you can give them something. You can give them the kingdom in Jesus' name. Guys, you can give part of your testimony when you do your signature or your panel talk or brotherhood review. Girls, you can invite out the new members to coffee that'll blow their mind that a junior or a senior wants to spend time with them. So there are so many little ways that we probably forget that we can bring in the kingdom. And Jesus wants to use you. The reason you're in your chapter is not just to have a resume, not just to network for a job after school, but it's to bring the kingdom to your chapter. You're in your chapter specifically because God put you there. And He wants to use you to show people that He's the King of creation and He's the Lord of your life and can be the Lord of their life too. So I want to bring up Ian. Where do you go? Ian's got an incredible story that is another way that it might look like for you give them something to eat idea.
Hey guys. So this past summer I went on a mission trip to Guatemala. And for those of you who haven't been on a mission trip, and even if you have, I highly recommend. They're life-changing. And just as a side note, I didn't know going to Guatemala ahead of time, but it turned out that two people on exec here at Doulos were interning. They're in Guatemala with the mission trip we're going on, so they're already there waiting when we got there, which was pretty crazy. But anyway, so while we're in Guatemala, we learned how to do this type of praying called Ask the Lord. And we were doing that for prayer walks to do prayer healing. And Ask the Lord is a lot like it sounds. You have something in mind that you're going to go do, and for us it was to go on a prayer walk and pray for healing. And you sit and you sort of meditate and you ask the Lord to give you any kind of sign, any words, any images, any symbols that would lead you on your walk as a hint to something that you would want to follow and for Him to guide you. And so He taught us that method, and we got together one night to go out and do prayer walks. And they told us ahead of time, like, whatever you get while you're praying, just run with it, tell us what it is. It can be really weird, you have no idea. So we got together in small groups and started praying. And I cleared my mind and asked the Lord, God, what do you have for me on this prayer walk for our group? And surely enough, it was really weird. I got the image of Barney, the cartoon, for those of you guys who've seen it when you're little. And then another guy in the group got the image of a giant giant chicken and upside down umbrellas, and that's be important later. So anyways, we share with each other, everyone, what we saw, and go out into the street to randomly walk on the street and meet people. And we were going to pray for healing, was the specific thing that we wanted to do. And that's something I've never done before. I've never prayed for a miracle of healing. It was very interesting to me. So we're walking around and we decided to start with mine because mine's the most unique, like Barney, what could that possibly mean? So think of anything that could have to do with Barney. We decided like there's a lot of party stores in the city here in Guatemala, and we thought maybe there'd be some paper plates or some balloons or something that would have Barney on it. So we're walking around, go to the first party store and meet with the owners and talk to them and pray for them, and they don't have any Barney stuff, but they recommend that we go to a pinata shop on the other side of the town. So we're walking to the other side of town, and we see this old man who is being held up by some other younger men. And you can see that his legs are frozen, his knees don't bend, so it's very hard for him to walk, and he's walking very slowly down the road. And the guy who's leading our group said, well, while we're on our way, why don't we stop? And this man clearly could use some healing, so why don't we talk to him? So we stopped, and the guy who was leading the group, of course, was translating. Everything was in Spanish. But we're talking to the man, and he calls me over and says, Ian, why don't you talk to this guy? It's something pretty interesting that you would want to hear. So I'm talking to him, he's translating, and I ask the guy what his name is, and he looks at me and says, in Spanish, and then we can translate it, it says, that my name is Barnabas, but my friends call me Barney. And I was like, that's incredible. So we asked the man if he'd like to pray for him and pray for healing, and he says, of course. So we all get together and we start praying, and already, obviously, the fact that this guy's name was Barney was already blown me away, but we're praying for healing, and as I'm praying, I'm looking around, and this guy in a giant chicken suit walks by, and he's throwing, I think, confetti or something. It was nighttime at this point. There's a man in a giant chicken suit, and then I look to the other side, and there's one of the party stores there, and surely enough, there's an umbrella stand with upside down umbrellas in it, and I'm like, wow, we're obviously going to see something happen here. So, pray for the man, pray for healing, finish up praying, and then the guy who was translating asked him, like, do you feel anything different? And the guy said that he felt very warm, warmth in his legs. So the men that he was with were his sons. So the guy translating asked if we could see if the guy could walk and move his legs and be fine. Of course, his sons were freaking out. They said that they haven't seen their father walk on his own in 10 years, so they really weren't comfortable with him trying to walk on his own. So we talked to them and convinced them that, everything's going to be okay, we'll be right here, we're going to make sure everything's fine. And finally they're okay with it. And surely enough, the man, as soon as they let him go, is able to walk almost an entire block in the town on his own, which brought everyone immediately to tears. The man was crying, the sons were crying, everybody was moved. They said they hadn't seen their father walk in 10 years. So after that, we get back together and, of course, pray, and pray for them and pray for the father and everything. And it's really powerful.
Healings and stuff before this, like what you do normally?
Never.
Never healing?
No.
But you must have the gift of healing or something like that.
No.
You're just an average guy that did something crazy?
Yeah. No, I'm not pre-med either.
Good. So, I'm not suggesting that every one of us is going to have a Barney in our chapter that we're going to pray for and they're going to literally go from not being able to walk to walk. But I am suggesting that God is greater than what you think He is, and He wants to do greater things through you than you think He does. And here's what I think is going on in your mind, because this is what is going on through my mind. This is what went on through Ian's mind is, I can't do this. See, God, I've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. I can't feed 5,000 people. Right? You're thinking that. You're probably thinking several things. You're thinking, you don't know my regrets. You don't know my past sin. You don't know the shame that I carry. You don't know the guilt that I have. God, you can't use me like that. So these are lies, by the way. Your regrets are lies. Maybe you're thinking, well, my resources, they're not that great. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to share my story of coming to Christ. I haven't even come to Christ yet myself. How can I do this? I can't, God. Or you might be thinking the exact opposite. It's not your past. It's not the regrets you have. It's not your lack of resources. Maybe as US students, you're thinking, I've got the resume. I don't really need God. I can just kind of do this thing on my own. I mean, I've been doing well on my own so far. I did great through high school, landed here, got a great internship. I'm in the chapter I wanted to be in. So maybe you're not thinking of regrets and lack of resources. You're thinking like too many resources. I just want to encourage you to remember, you've got nothing except 5 loaves and 2 fish, and you cannot feed that many people by yourself. Jesus himself said it this way, apart from me, you can do nothing. But abiding in me, you can do many things. In fact, he says this in John 14, believe me when I say that I am in the Father and that the Father is in me. Or at least believe on the evidence of the works I do, like feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than this. And you're probably still thinking, there is no way. I can't do this. God, I only have this. So my encouragement to you guys is whatever you have, give that to Jesus to use. You only have 1 loaf and 1 fish, give that to Jesus and let him do something through you. You give them something to eat. You give them in your chapter something to eat. You give them someone in your classes something. You give them someone in your major something. You give them your hometown friends from high school something. You give them something of the kingdom. Whatever it is you have, however bad it is, however unprofessional or polished it is, you give them something. And watch Jesus do something amazing. Because he is greater than you think. And he wants to do something greater through you than you think. So here's the discussion question for you to discuss just with the person next to you, 2 or 3 people. Who is God putting on your heart that is like the Barney for Ian? Is God putting someone in your, not a cartoon character, but who, a person, is God putting on your heart? Someone in your chapter, someone from back home, someone in your family. Who's that person God is like putting on your heart? Second question is, what is that you have to give Jesus that he can use to touch that person, to show that person that Jesus is greater than they can imagine? So take a minute or so and discuss that with someone next to you. Who is that person? Who is your Barney? And what do you have to give Jesus to use?